Hi, everybody, and welcome to our live product analytics Q&A events. So as many of you know, this has been a very exciting week at Memfault. It's our second ever launch week. These launch weeks are a way for us to share with the world all the things that we have been, well, when I say we, really, Heiko's team and our engineering team have been building over the past few months. They've done amazing work, and I can't wait to give you a brief overview and answer all your questions about it. Heiko, how do you feel about this launch week?
I feel great about it. And I don't want to take all the credit here. This is not just product and engineering. This is a company effort. So many things have happened across the entire company to make this possible. To announce what we worked on is really just like the icing on top. Many things have happened throughout the quarter, but now it's time to celebrate and share.
I think, as many people know, the headliner this time for this launch week was product analytics. Product analytics is a very, very special launch for me because it is the very first new pillar of our products that we've shipped at Memfault. I think, as many people know, Memfault does performance monitoring, device debugging, and OTA updates. That's what we've done for the past 5 years. Product analytics is brand new, and it's a whole new set of capabilities and a whole new set of use cases that we've been able to explore. Maybe you can share a little bit about how does it work under the hood. You can tell us about sessions and the kinds of analysis that we can do with them.
Sure, that's the how it works. Usually in product land, we start with the why and what's the value and everything, but I can jump right into the how it actually works. It's leveraging Memfault's infrastructure end to end. So we have these very capable on-device SDKs optimized for embedded devices with many constraints in bandwidth, compute, storage, you name it. Some of them are not even really connected to the internet. We had that for a while to collect basic telemetry that periodically sends information about devices. And we built on top of that in a way where we not only care about the overall average health of a device, but we now are able to capture interactions, meaningful activities that really depend on these specific devices. So some of them are consumer-facing products, others are industrial devices, others are enterprise devices. They all are built for a purpose, and sometimes it is not just enough to know how reliable a device works, but how it's being used in the field. So we have now a way to capture telemetry in sessions that are of a variable length, can happen at arbitrary times. We collect that at scale, so it's not just something that will work for hundreds of devices. This is like in the millions. And then we have the whole data processing pipeline Memfault is known for reliability engineering that we leverage here to ultimately surface information to the end user in our web application. And there is the counterpart, the complementary work we did this quarter, where you can slice and dice data in a way it was never possible in Memfault before. And so instead of just observing how successful an OTA release works, or if overall the number of crashes declined over time, or to operate your fleet and see if something suspicious happens in the moment, you can now literally look and correlate data to understand the environment your product has been used in. Are the temperature ranges meeting my expectations? Are people using that feature? How often is this particular industrial device being used, so that we should start thinking about proactive maintenance? That kind of thing, and slicing by region, by all these different dimensions is really what this enables.
And it's not just the fact that we create this new capability. I think the thing that really stands out to me is a set of problems we had to solve that are really hard, that some of our customers have either had to build custom infrastructure to solve, or even haven't been able to solve before. In my head, it's, there's three things really. The first one is, how do we collect data from the devices, the right data from the devices, in a way that is respectful of the constraints that those devices operate under? How do we make sure that we can collect things like these sessions, like a camera is on, camera is off, or a user is exercising with the device, or a transaction is being processed by a payment processing system? Collecting the telemetry that come with them, the battery level and so on, and then saving them on device, pushing them to the clouds without impacting the battery life of the device, without impacting the bandwidth available to the device. That's already a hard problem. And then there's of course the problem of ingesting all of that data, right? If you have millions of devices, you're potentially seeing thousands, tens of thousands or more requests per second, ingesting all that data. That's a complex front end that also is dealing with binary data structures. And then of course on the back end, there is storing that data and querying it at scale, live, right, in real time, without resorting to a batch system that might take days to give you any kind of answers. Which piece stands out to you as the most, the one that was the most complex, or solves the biggest problem?
I think these are two different things. Most complex for us to solve, I would say, is on the analytical piece, slicing the data and making it so that not only data scientists can make sense of it, but the average user who just want to get insights. That for us, I would feel was the most difficult problem to solve. For anybody who wants to build this themselves, I think it's the on-device piece where traditionally there are SDKs for this in the server world and maybe in the Linux space, but they produce such an unmanageable amount of data on the device itself, which requires storage that an embedded device would not offer, and also bandwidth. And yes, you could totally solve this with tracing and go in all the details, but we, I think, found a really good sweet spot that gives you the insights within these constraints, as you said. So if rebuilding this, I think the challenging part, if anybody wanted to use a stock solution or rebuilding it, please be aware this is a rabbit hole. For us, that was kind of solved already because of our pre-existing SDK that combines all these other features anyway. For us, it was the analytical piece, I would say.
And so, of course, you hinted at the most important question, which is, why did we build this? I think for me, I'll share my point of view, which is, first, at Memfault, we're here to help our customers and hardware businesses more broadly build the best products they can. And we started with reliability. And because we think that reliability is the basics, right? If your product doesn't work, it doesn't matter what it does. And so we built all of these systems so that you can know how well your product is working in the field, and then have the data you need to act if the products aren't working right. But of course, a good product isn't just one that works. A good product is one that does something useful, that does what customers expect. And there, I think our existing offering didn't really help you answer those questions, but we saw that our customers desperately wanted those answers. In fact, many of them were using our observability solutions to try to get at that usage data, try to get at that product analytics. And so by observing their behavior and also inspecting our own intuition about what the industry needs is how we landed at product analytics. Are there specific use case where this fell into place for you? Was there a moment where you thought, obviously, product analytics is something we have to do next?
Well, the next piece, when was that? I mean, obviously, we have to build this. As you said, we are on this mission. We usually say, make software the most reliable part of the IoT device. I like that you said product, because when we were working with customers to develop this whole product analytics package, we interviewed them and got questions such as, well, I want to know how my hardware device is being used. Does my next generation device need an Ethernet port or not? So this is really interesting because you use software here and observability, but not just by averaging out reliability metrics, but by really measuring and then making accessible how it's been used to inform hardware decisions. So that I found really interesting. There are many anecdotes like these, but your question, when was it that it became obvious? We recently improved. It was a multi-month effort to get us to these device vitals, and before that, which gives you, out-of-the-box reliability metrics that you can have on all devices, no matter which industry or platform you're on. And a precursor of that was configurable dashboards. So we built that out over the course of months to get to what is a necessary prerequisite for product analytics, where you have to have this explorative approach with adjustable dashboards. And so when you ask me the timing, I mean, it couldn't have been done earlier because you needed this infrastructure. And yeah, so we aligned the different efforts. We worked with customers for whom we built custom visualizations before to learn how you would want to slice data, and then rolled out the first SDK that supported sessions already, I think, in November for our MCU SDK as a preview feature. And so, yeah, the time was ripe to actually work on it.
So in effect, this is always something we knew we needed to do. It was always
Absolutely,
something
yes.
that the industry needed,
Yeah.
but it is only now that our data platform got to the point or the place where we could build these features and make them available to our customers in a performant way and with the user experience that we expect. Maybe one last thing I want to touch on is, I think that one thing that makes this product analytics really so exciting for me is also that it makes our core product much better, because having this usage data actually makes for really good reliability answers that we can provide, which we couldn't provide before, right? The example of what's my device's battery life is an interesting question. What's my device's battery life while it is being used in this way or that way is an even more interesting question. What's your take on how these two features interact? And is there, was it surprising to you, or is it by design that these two features are actually so tightly coupled?
Thank you for staging that question. We operate with a design philosophy that we want to be able to combine all these different features. We call it a compound product. And the idea is that features we build are not just for this one particular use case, but so that you have orthogonal capabilities that click together. You can use the new analytical features and slicing and dicing data with everything we built before without using sessions at all. Reliability metrics such as battery is a good example. If you want to do, say, a vacuum robot, like one of these household robots that clean your kitchen, they are in two distinct modes. Too detailed. So you can totally use the analytical feature with everything we built before, or vice versa. You can collect sessions and look at their data with all the search capabilities, debugging on the device timeline. I mean, forget about all the analytical slicing and dicing of data. Isn't it great that you can look at a device timeline, see crashes, logs, all the telemetry, and then alongside with it depicted over time which state a device was in and how exactly with the custom metrics you choose to collect with a metric performed over time? I mean, this is such a no-brainer that you want to have that. And we knew it, and we knew it from our customers. I wouldn't say that this was a master plan to deliver it exactly this month, but everything just led to it.
Yeah, things just fell in place. It felt really good when this product came together. On Wednesday, of course, this is not just about product analytics. On Wednesday, we announced Quick Starts, which is a brand new onboarding process and set of improvements to our SDK to make it really easy to use Memfault on a new device. Adopting any kind of third-party software on an embedded device is honestly very difficult. You oftentimes have to fight your build system to figure out how to hook things together. You often have to write a good amount of code to plug it into your file system, plug it into your connectivity systems, because they're never standardized. So there's a lot of customization needed. And that has meant that for some of our customers, it takes sometimes days or weeks to even get started, see any kind of data flowing. Quick Start is our answer to that. I think it's a very, very exciting innovation in the way that we allow our customers to get data to the clouds really quickly. How does Quick Start solve this problem, Heiko?
First, the what once more. In product land, if you want to onboard a user and win a customer, you need to get them to that aha moment where they finally understand and fully trust what this potential purchase, the product they're looking at, would bring in terms of value. And in Memfault, this is fairly complex because, as you pointed out, you need to do something on the device. You need to install an SDK, and then you need to deploy it. Somehow the data pipeline needs to be established. We may have time to talk about data pipeline as well. And then finally, you want to then look at the data. And what we did is, so this is particularly difficult. And we wanted to make this very, very, very simple. And we explored different options, which we may iterate on in a future version of Memfault. But for now, what we experimented with on Android first was an idea, why can you not just like download an app to get Memfault onto the device? And so with that methodology, we started off, and it's not just the SDK, it's actually all the necessary steps we carry the user through. It's the documentation for their particular SDKs. It's also in the application a clear guide which step to take in order to see which data, instead of a very long end-to-end documentation. So yeah, it's SDK optimizations, but sometimes fundamentally thinking about it differently. On Android, it's literally an APK installation. On Linux, it's a one-liner. MCU is sometimes more involved, but thanks to our partners, it could be, and just like a configuration flag as well, depending on the SDK you're on. We had a sales conversation where a sales rep from Memfault, together with a prospect, was able to set up a device and look at the real world data during a call. And that was just amazing to see.
Like in under 30 minutes, basically. Going
Yeah.
from zero to data flowing just on a single Zoom call.
Yeah, and not just like on demo device on our end. It was the prospect's real device on their desk. So they agreed to try it out on the call, and it was just fantastic to see. Of course, this wouldn't be production-grade integration, but it's very close. And at that point, you truly have that aforementioned aha moment and can get to the next steps.
So in effect, we've done a ton of work to make the SDKs really build new SDKs for a number of platforms, so that on those platforms you can get Memfault up and running with just sometimes one line of code, one configuration change, or just a one-liner bash commands on Linux. This is huge, because before that we were talking about writing custom code, a good amount of it.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention though is like this is not an all new SDK. Like in particular, I would be risk averse here as our target audience. This is not a rewrite. We made things more convenient. Like this is the same trustworthy and like vetted and battle proven SDK we always had.
Looking at what's coming next briefly before we move to questions. So, and of course, there are many other things we announced this week. We just can't touch on all of them. But looking ahead, I think the thing that's been top of mind for me, of course, is compliance. We know that there's a lot changing in the industry, with especially in Europe, the CRA coming into force in the next few years. We've definitely been thinking about that a lot. And as we look to Q3 and future launch weeks, that's definitely going to be top of mind for us. Maybe you can share a few tidbits about what you're thinking about and what you're excited about as you think about the future.
In relation to security, I mean, as you can hear by my accent, I'm from Germany.
I'll let you go any direction you want. Just
Yeah,
Tell us the
yeah.
future,
No, let me
Heiko.
let me talk about security. So in Germany in particular, but Europe in general, we have a very consumer-oriented approach where regulations are in place to protect the consumer. Um, and there's one of these security-related regulations on the horizon, the Cyber Resilient Act. And I think it was this March, yeah, when it took a next step in the long-lasting endeavor of getting enacted. And so people are talking about it because, for anybody on the call who doesn't know this, once it's enacted and enforced, one cannot sell electronic devices and like IoT devices in Europe unless you meet all the regulatory requirements. So you need to be compliant with the CRA. And it's really funny to see. If you read it through, it basically describes a set of requirements. And I would say these are best practices in the IoT world, something we see many of our customers doing and very much in alignment with Memfault is preaching. You need to have, first and foremost, a way to update your devices in the field. Because if there's a security problem, you better have a way to fix it. You need to observe it and see that something is wrong in the first place. So you need observability and everything we talked about earlier here. You need a way to maintain a device inventory and see which devices are currently active anywhere. I mean, this is the core data entity in our data model. And so it turns out that Memfault is actually a natural fit because we were advocating for best practices all along. And there are similar regulations in other countries as well, including the US. And yeah, I think this is very well in alignment with Memfault in the foreseeable future, so that we can support the industry in fulfilling these requirements, so that even here in Germany we can continue to receive amazing devices.
I'm excited to talk about it more over the next few months. But let's move to our Q&A. So we have a number of people who have submitted some questions ahead of time. But of course, if you're here watching, don't hesitate to add a comment on LinkedIn, and we will read live from the comments and answer those questions too. Let me start with one of the pre-submitted questions, which is, can I collect product analytics data if my device is intermittently connected? Heiko, you want to take that one?
Yeah, and I see that this question actually came up just a minute ago. Hey, Pritham. Yeah, of course. You can collect product analytics even if your device is not connected to the internet. And that makes it really interesting because many product analytics tools today and SDKs that exist run on a phone, or you would analyze your server endpoints to see how a device is actually interacting. But if your device isn't even connected and you want to see what was going on and how it was being used, say, what was actually the humidity level, what was the battery level like before and after, what's the delta while you were performing that activity, how would you know? And Memfault has a way, like it was what is that? Bread and butter anyway for our periodic heartbeats all along. We have a way to collect the data, to store it efficiently, and then upload it at the time the device becomes connected again. And then everything we talked about before naturally falls in place. So it's been designed from the ground up with that requirement.
The next question is one that we've heard actually multiple times before, which is, what makes Memfault's solution unique compared to other product analytics tools? I'm thinking of tools like Mixpanel or Amplitudes that folks use in the cloud for product analytics. Let me take a stab at that one, and you'll add if I'm missing anything. Ultimately, something that makes Memfault itself very unique is that we are optimized for embedded devices. It's one thing to collect data and from the cloud or from a mobile app and show it in a dashboard. It's another to collect it from a IoT device, which might have bandwidth, power, CPU constraints, memory constraints, storage constraints. And so in order to really collect the right data in a way that doesn't impact the device, you need a completely different architecture and a completely different solution. And so those of you who have tried to push data from your devices to Mixpanel know that it's not a really good match. It ends up being difficult to get the right data in there and get enough data in there that the default analysis that exists in those tools works well for you. The other piece I think that's underappreciated is that Memfault put the device at the center of our data model, which means that everything comes down to a device, not a user, not a host, not a server. And we can attach a lot of attributes to the device. We attach, software updates and versions to the device, hardware revisions to the device, which we then let you, compare or analyze the data over. And that means that we can answer questions about your devices, not just, some undifferentiated objects. Anything that I missed in the comparison between Memfault and existing cloud product analytics solutions?
No, I think this is these are all the technical reasons. Sure, that we out of the box collect the right tags or properties with alongside with what other tools would call a span or trace. That's true. I think Mixpanel and other tools are superior when it comes to data slicing and visualizations. I mean, they've been specializing in this for years. I would counter that our visualizations are good enough and optimized for the use cases our target audience expects. And if not, we, being an agile company, can quickly iterate. So that's great. But I want to double down on what you said earlier with the data model. When you have usually these product analytics tools, you think in charts and slicing and different projections of the data. At some point, you then have some average or something, or a unique data point, which is just a number. For us, you can literally click on that thing. You see then the device, its timeline, the crashes that happened with that device, the update cycle it had been on, even attributes such as the region it was running in, the geographic region. So you can navigate all the way from these high-level insights down to millisecond precision recordings of a device in a timeline, open 3 of them, see a pattern, and then go up again to that perspective that you would normally have in a tool such as Mixpanel. So the interaction with everything else you do on Memfault, including something like initiating an update now to those devices that exhibit a particular behavior, that makes it really unique, I would say. You are not jumping from one tool to another and always see only like half at best what you actually want to get access to.
How many devices does this scale to? How many devices can I integrate?
Yeah, I mean, we have customers with millions of devices. So, and this is also product design philosophy. There could have been approaches when you're only dealing with tens of devices, like 15 or 500 devices. I think we would have chosen different interactions at places. But this whole thing has been from the ground up. Not only the infrastructure, but also the way you're interacting and expressing something has been designed from the ground up to think in hundreds of thousands and millions of devices.
I think we have now tens of millions of devices registered with the service. So we certainly have proven that it can scale. And in fact, I think, as you said, if you're looking at very, very low number of devices, do you really need fleet analytics? You probably can look at each of them one at a time. And that might even be a better approach.
Yeah, Memfault started maybe with that thought. We still have to this date an attribute on a device that's called nickname. I was about to say, well, at that time, you can probably enumerate the devices by heart. That still exists these days. I would probably tag devices and slice them differently. But yeah, I mean, there are solutions that in the market for some niche use cases, such as SSHing remotely into a Linux box. Totally. Fine idea. And then running a couple of shell scripts, of course. If you are on Linux, if you have permanent internet connection, if it's like 20 devices, but that wouldn't scale. You need to, even if you would automate shell execution remotely, you would then better have a way to observe if that actually works for tens of thousands of those.
What's the right time to integrate product analytics on your device? Is this a development thing? Is this a production thing? Like, are there constraints? And is the data useful long after launch? What's your recommendation there, if any?
I mean, always, earlier, whatever. So, oftentimes people think that this is a development tool because it's, for engineers. This is great to start, and it's great to start integrating Memfault while you are developing a device, because you oftentimes want to have that as a baseline when comparing it to the lab environment and then the production environment and the beta cohorts, for sure. Really valuable, many of these features at scale once you are in production, but development makes sense. What I'm really excited about when it comes to product analytics is that even if you have no budget or no intent really to change your product in the field, because say you are like 4 years in, you are about to end of life it in 2 years time, why would you even think about fixing bugs? You want people to buy the next product, right? You should better install Memfault on these devices, not to fix bugs. You will discover them and you will be embarrassed, but let's ignore that for a second. You will learn something about the behavior of these devices in the field, and that can inform your next generation's device before you are able to ship that one. And so I would say, I mean, as always, install Memfault immediately, and more so now.
Our professional recommendation: install Memfault immediately. I'll ask you one last question, and then unfortunately we'll have to go, which is, our example at the keynotes earlier this week was about a fitness tracker, a Bluetooth connected consumer device. Is Memfault optimized for consumer use cases? Is it optimized for industrial use cases? Does it matter? How do you think about, we've given this one example, but how do you think about examples that are not consumer use cases? And do you think that product analytics makes sense in those cases?
Yeah, we see customers across different industries, consumer facing, enterprise facing, across the board. At this stage, Memfault is not optimized for any particular vertical or industry. It's pretty generic. If you ask me another question about the future, I think this will also change in the future to optimize perspectives on particular verticals here, really. There is no different. The keynote example we gave, because it's relatable. People who are in a particular niche area may still use a fitness tracker, or at least have heard of it. And so it was a fine example to explain certain use cases. We didn't want to mislead anybody. Memfault is not like a consumer-only product of sorts. I mean, we intentionally, I think that's now 1.5 years back, broadened the support of platforms from starting with microcontrollers that you may predominantly find in consumer products, but we broadened that across different kinds of microcontrollers over to AOSP and Linux for a reason, because we want to cover not only all of these different embedded platforms that you find in all of these industries, especially in the industrial environment or B2B cases, we see combinations thereof. So I remember in our internal customer webinar, there was a question about a payment system, and we have several customers who are in that field, payment terminals, and they usually consist of multiple embedded devices in lockstep. And some of them running a gateway or something, oftentimes running Linux. Some terminals with a screen usually run Android. The actual card reader with a secure enclave oftentimes is a microcontroller. So in order to cover this, you need a system that is capable of speaking all of them. And guess what? Memfault is. And this is for sure not a consumer product.
You touched on the cross-platform aspect. I think that's a huge strength of the solution here, which is that it works on MCUs, it works on Android devices, it works on Linux devices. And to go back to the industrial versus consumer question, I think for me, at a high level, the questions that product analytics and Memfault more broadly helps you answer: how well is my device working, and how is it actually being used in the field? They're universal. They're not unique to consumer electronics, that's for sure. In many ways, it's even harder in some industrial use cases to know at all whether the device is being used in the context you expected. And with that, we're actually now a few minutes over time, so I think that's a wrap. But I want to thank everybody who joined us today. And Heiko, thank you so much for joining me. This was fun, and I look forward to the next one of these.